And speaking to boys, like younger boys, I think one of the things that they're really suffering from, I get tons of responses rather unexpectedly whenever I talk about the topic of pornography on my show. And it's one of those things that, again, if you found Candace 10 years ago and you asked me about pornography, and by the way, this was actually implanted into my head from a health school, like from health education, where they would say pornography is healthy, people should watch pornography, people should engage in pornography, it's okay if you're in a relationship for you to watch pornography. And then I had a huge wake-up call when I spoke to Tim Ballard. He runs Operation Underground, and then I realized how closely pornography is related to human sex trafficking.
Real sex trafficking, not TikTok
sex trafficking. And yeah, we should talk about that because they are kind of stretching the definition of sex trafficking. In your case, I've taken a look at it. And what's remarkable to me is the amount of young men, and I would say from the ages of 18 to 35, that write in and say how much they're struggling with porn, how much they're struggling with pornography addiction, how they feel that no person is talking about the ills of pornography. Yeah. And so I just watched this clip of you this morning, sitting next to Adam, 22.
You were ever interested in doing your first ever double penetration scene that me and Lena, I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like,
yo, dude,
would he be a suitable candidate?
Andrew Tate,
can I tap him in?
I don't know. No. He looks built.
Can I fill in real quick? Andrew,
you're out. Aiden, we canceled you. You're not in this conversation anymore.
Fair enough. Go ahead, Andrew. Would you double penetrate her, bro? Would you do that, Andrew? Go ahead. Finish the answer question.
All pop together, is that chill?
There's absolutely 0% chance of that happening. And it's not because Lena is particularly unattractive. It's because she's married to Adam, and I have no interest in degenerate, pointless sex, and I have no interest in making a spectacle of myself or even just involving myself in anything which I deem to be overall haram and pointless. It's just not something I'd be interested in. There's not a single amount of money on the planet you could pay me to undertake. So
you were very polite. I'm not going to be so polite. I thought he was an absolute degenerate. And I mean that the idea of having a woman making the vows that you make in marriage and literally offering her body as he did to you was a form of degeneracy. And you were being very nice and measured. And I think that for that moment, that was the best thing that you possibly could have done because she looked quite vulnerable. Yeah. Lena, I think is her name. Yeah. But how do you reconcile that now, right? You're in a circumstance like this. You're being polite. You did say I'm uncomfortable. You did say that I would never do this. And I think that was really important for you to say. But you're not the same person. I mean, how did you?
Yeah.
Even reflecting on it. It's so disgusting. He offered you his wife.
It is pretty disgusting, and it's also pretty misogynistic because he didn't ask her. He offered her. I felt sorry for her, so I was very measured with my conversation with them because I felt sorry for her. I could tell she was nervous. She was swinging on the chair back and forth. She didn't want to be there. She felt extremely nervous, and I think that only a coward would berate a very nervous, very scared woman, even if she did something which I personally disagree with, even if I think Adam is he doesn't align with my morals, because she was so nervous and because she was so almost afraid she looked. Mm-hmm. And I think she expected me to go at her hard. So I just felt sorry doing it. I couldn't find, maybe I'm getting soft in my old age, but I think she knows what I think, and I think she knows what the world thinks. And I think if I go at her too hard, it's just going to break her. And I don't really like the idea of her, turning off the camera and bawling her eyes out. I think that God will teach her the lessons she needs to learn from her experience, both positive and negative. And I think that's God's job to do and not necessarily mine. But yeah, it was certainly uncomfortable, and it shows how degenerate the world is becoming. And pornography as a whole is simply just, I think it's an effect. I think it's a tool which is used to ensure that the male populace stays as docile as possible. Mm. I don't think that any of the things that are happening to the male population are accidental. I think that keeping us as docile as possible is very interesting for the people who are in charge of the world, because we're the warrior class. At the end of the day, it's going to boil down to the men who are going to stand up and actually do something about anything at some point in time. So I think they like the idea of us being docile. And I mean, how much more docile can you get than a man sitting there looking at a screen, not even want to reproduce for real because he's just staring at a screen? And I think that's just a next stage in the slave mind.
And it's everywhere now. Whereas, and this is something that my husband says, he doesn't have any social media because he's like, Instagram is pornography. I open my Instagram and I've got Emily Ratajkowski's butt cheeks. Yeah. And I'm not a man, so I don't have that same biological reaction to seeing it. But I can only imagine how difficult it is for a man when you open an app and you've got Kim Kardashian offering her body to Emily Ratajkowski. even if you're walking down the street, I've realized even how desensitized I've become to pornography, because you see an ad for Gucci and for whatever reason, she's got to be completely naked while she's holding the bag.
I remember in my lifetime, there were music videos that got censored or banned or can only be played after 10 or 11 at night. And if you watch them now, you'd be like, what? For what? What is that? A bikini? Like, it's nothing. It's amazing how quickly it has degenerated. And yeah, absolutely.
And we're all degenerating with it. Like I've realized the fact that I don't have a reaction to seeing the half-naked woman holding a Gucci bag means that I have been desensitized to pornography. And I can only imagine what that does to men.
Oh, completely. And but this is what the powers that be want. They want to make sure that the male populace is as docile as possible. And they do that with a large array of weapons. And they do that with a web of tools. And I believe that I'm the counter to that, which is the reason I ended up attacked in the first place. But unfortunately, when you buy into the slave mind programming, you not become the kind of man who can easily attract a woman, because you're not attractive to females as a whole. So how do you satisfy yourself? You end up sitting there staring at a screen, and they convince you that's a good life to live as a man, and that's perfectly fine and perfectly normal. And you don't even get to genetically reproduce.